My name is Marcia Robinson, and we are recording an oral history with Robert Corky Cordray as part of the Sweet MUMories Oral History Project to mark the 50th anniversary of the Miami University Middletown, Ohio campus. This interview is taking place on September 3rd, 2016 at the Johnston Hall on campus. Mr. Cordray, do I have your consent to proceed with this interview?
Yes.
Thank you. Would you mind telling us what your connection is to the MUM campus?
When I graduated from high school, well, actually it was during my senior year, this campus was in the construction phase. And I had the opportunity to be student with the #1 designation. I had enrollment application 0001, so I was the first student here. I'm the oldest guy around then, I guess.
Can you tell us about the conversation in the high school about this new campus?
It was the conversation about this campus in high school, particularly in Middletown, was kind of multifaceted. There were those that said, yes, I'm going to Miami and I'm going to college. There were others that said, is this really a high school with ashtrays? Is this really college? This was a new concept. And it was a lot less personally regulated. I mean, you showed up for class or you didn't. You did your homework or you didn't. Unlike the high school environment where you were pretty well structured. Mm-hmm. So people were concerned. I remember the groundbreaking ceremony. The Middletown High School marching band played for the groundbreaking ceremony. I was in the marching band, was here and played and hoped they'd hurry up and get it built so I could continue my education. So that's kind of my connection, and it's a 50-year-old connection and not what I'll say a current connection, because I have lived out of state since 1973, and prior to that, Oxford, in the military, and so on.
I'd like to talk about maybe some more details about the opening day. You said your father may have been involved in that ceremony?
Yes. My father was the news director of the local radio station here in Middletown, Ohio, WPFB. Everyone in Middletown, if you mentioned Bob Cordray, they would think of my dad. It happened last night when I was in town out for dinner. If you said Corky, people thought of me. So Dad was involved with the people, especially the Armco folks who were involved. Logan Johnston was a family friend. I got to know Dean Theskin quite well, and those were the people who were at the outset, along with Dr. Bennett, involved. It was interesting to me because you talk about Verity Lodge, Johnston Hall. Those aren't, now to people, they're names from the deep past. For me, they were people I knew, and that makes me feel real old, I can tell you.
Well, I'd like to take advantage of that and talk about the campus when it was still Bunny Hollow and Armco Park and the Armco sense of community. Can you speak to that?
Sure. When this campus first started, it was, I guess you'd say, carved out of part of Forest Hills Country Club and part of Bunny Hollow, which was a section of Armco Park, where they had the annual Easter egg hunts. And in that park was a great old-fashioned community park, and a lot of people were sad to see it go. I mean, there were an old-fashioned carousel. There were other park rides that you could go, and it was like you were taking a step back in time. So comes along this project, and the nickname when it first started was Bunny Hollow Tech, because this was, to most of us, this was the new incarnation of Bunny Hollow. And it was, there was nothing here. There was Johnston Hall, there was Gardner Harvey Library. The library, for the most part, didn't have any books. The shelves most of the shelves and stacks were empty. There were boxes dotted around on the floor with furniture to be assembled. So when you first came in here, this was basically a blank slate. There was nothing here as far as any community organizations. There was nothing here as far as any typical college, fraternity, sorority things. There wasn't a newspaper. There wasn't any of this. So what that meant was if you wanted to do it, or you wanted that, you had to do it. Now, fortunately, we were blessed with a staff that was very willing to help students, but they were also very insistent that, okay, the student takes the lead and do things. I remember I was chairman of the Artist and Lecture Series, and that was with Claire Easton, wonderful lady, and just was always encouraging us to, okay, what artists do we want to bring in? We had a budget. If memory serves me, it was less than $5,000 for the whole year, and probably closer to $3,000. There was a large lecture hall here in Johnston Hall. It was where Dr. Bergstrom taught the physiology class. It was the big lecture hall. I think it's now been consumed in some of the additions that you have put on, but that was our venue. And I can remember we would bring people in. We didn't have a stage, so we have to set up a stage. Set up our own chairs, sell our own tickets, do all the work. And I can remember one artist in particular that came in, and she was a dancer. And we had gone to the Middletown High School, borrowed risers that the band used. Of course, a lot of us were band members, so that wasn't hard to get permission. Brought them in, set up a beautiful stage, chairs all around. This artist came in along with her husband, and he said, "That's not suitable. She can't dance on that." This is the night before the concert. Now what do? We had to take all these risers down that were the stage, put the risers back, put the chairs on the risers, so now the audience sat up and watched. I can remember a lot of things like that would happen, and you learned from that. That was, I don't want to say the true learning experience here, but the true learning experience here for me was if you want something that needs to be done, especially if it's a sense of community, you got to get off your butt and do it yourself. I learned that lesson very well from my father. It has carried on, and throughout life, the things that sort of had genesis here in community service and helping others and finding your niche. Not everybody is able to do everything. I've been blessed with 3 sons. The middle son was a volunteer firefighter. And he said to me one day, he said, "Dad, how come you don't belong to the volunteer fire company?" He said, "They need your sense of organization." Okay, so I sign up, they put me in the fire gear, send me through all kinds of training and so on. And for the last 10 years, I have been the president of the volunteer fire company. It's that sense of community that had its beginnings here, that you do things for others. And that was very strong here. I remember we had a fraternity here, Sigma Delta Phi. It was the first fraternity on campus. We all had blazers made. We had the logo embroidered on the pocket. On Friday, these guys that wore blue jeans and golf shirts and whatever to class all week, on Fridays, fraternity guys all wore their national blue blazers and a shirt and tie. I mean, that was just the way it was. That fraternity raised a lot of money for different charities, organizations to help out somebody in need. I can remember we had a fundraiser, and we were selling chances, this was around Thanksgiving time, on a live turkey. And we had the turkey in a big habitat in Johnston Hall, brought it in. Dr. Bennett just sort of raised his eyes and said, okay guys, do your thing. Ticket sales weren't that great because none of the students really wanted a live turkey. So how do we make lemonade out of lemons? Well, we turned it around. Hey, how about I sell you a ticket, a chance on this turkey? And you don't have to put your name on the chance. You can put the name of your favorite professor on the ticket. Oh my gosh, ticket sales went through the roof. And there was a physics professor, Dr. Stetzer. There is his nickname, he wrote on the board, I remember the first day of class, Mr. Wizard, and we called him Mr. Wizard all along. And sure enough, as fortune would have it, when we drew the winning ticket, it was for Dr. Stetzer. So some of the guys took the turkey, brought it into him during his physics class, and it was during the period that I had physics, and let it loose in the class. Let's put it politely, the turkey was not housebroken, but there was like a leash. So he said, well, he brings the turkey, and at the room where physics was, there was long, almost floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a roof. So he opened the window, set the turkey outside, slammed the leash in the window, so the turkey would run around, do something, nice flat roof, all the room. Turkeys fly. Before class, the turkey had gotten its way out of the harness and was now running loose on campus. His first remark to the class was, an extra 10 points on anybody's average in my class this semester who catches the turkey and brings it back. As luck would have it, the one student who didn't need the 10 points got the turkey, caught the turkey. And he came back in, and I remember when he came in, he said, Dr. Stetzer, I got the turkey. Great, where is it? Oh, I put it in your car. Dr. Stetzer had a GT 350 Shelby Mustang, the car that people would just give anything for today, one of the originals. And here was this black car, black interior with this turkey in it. So those were this kind of community things that went on here. It was a commuter campus. People, I don't want to say went home at night, but they went somewhere else. And they didn't come here 8 o'clock in the morning and stay till 5. They may come at 8 and leave at 10, come back at 3 and go home. So there was no, at that time, sense of family here. The only sense of family was if there were several of us in a class or a couple different classes that were getting out about the same time and that we had developed a friendship, would go to lunch together. And some of those people that you met here, you made lifelong friends. Not dissimilar to the commuter concept of this university at first. The one guy that was one of my closest friends here, and later my roommate in Oxford, I saw him this morning for the first time in probably 48 years. And it was like we were together yesterday. So it's probably more than you wanted to know. But my mind, as my wife will say, yes, your mind works very differently than others. I don't see history as a streaming continuum. I see history as little vignettes here, here, here. And it's not often that we're able to synthesize those and put those all together, but the brain records, in my mind, I see, the things like the turkey raffle or changing the stage here or doing that or being in particular professors' classes and so on.
I'd like to talk more about student activities. And you mentioned being in Bunny Hollow. Sometimes we hear stories about the hill.
Heart Attack Hill.
Okay, could you talk to us about some of the stories about that hill?
When this campus started, there was Johnston Hall, Gardner Harvey Library, and up on the hill was Verity Lodge, which was the old Armco Women's Club building. The basement of that had vending machines. It was not exactly gourmet dining, but it was here. If the weather was bad or somebody didn't have a car or whatever, you walked up Heart Attack Hill to go there to get your lunch or get dinner, depending on the time of day it was. I talked to somebody the other day and was asking where a couple of particular buildings. He says, "Oh, just go up Heart Attack Hill and you'll find it." So that name goes back to the beginning. The other thing that was interesting about that hill, the entryway that comes down off of University, which I assume is probably the main entrance today. Back in the day, it was one way. It was only in, there was no out. If you had a vehicle, you basically used the entrance off of Briel. Back to the artist and lecture series. We had an artist in, the same one whose husband said, can't dance on that, was parked their motorhome in the parking lot, stayed there overnight, set up, and the next night was performance. The next morning, the husband takes the motorhome, drives up Heart Attack Hill to go out and get some coffee, and happened to meet the campus director, Dr. Bennett, partway up the hill. And Dr. Bennett promptly informed him that this was a one-way street. And the man said, "Dr. Bennett, I'm only going one way." So it was a kinder, gentler time back then, but lots of giggles and fun.
I'd like to talk about the community connection to Armco Company. You mentioned that there was a tight connection, but that connection continued for you. So could you go over that connection for us?
Sure. And the connection, the Armco of the past. If you mention Armco to people who have been here long time, they will tell you what a wonderful company that was, how family-oriented they were, the sense of community that they had. If you had an organization that needed something, chances are somebody at Armco would see that got done. And that was true not only here, but in the other Armco plants around the country. I came here, there were a lot of Armco people who were actively supporting this campus in doing things. If you had an event such as the 50th anniversary, it wasn't unusual to see a bunch of Armco people who were volunteers doing things, helping out. If you didn't have video equipment, somebody did, and somebody was here helping, and it was that sense of community that went on. I finished here, went to Oxford for 2 years, graduated in 1970 from Oxford. Graduated on a Sunday. On Monday, I was at Parris Island in the Marine Corps, which was culture shock, especially in 1970 and what had recently happened at Kent State and what was going on in Vietnam. Did my tour of duty in the Marine Corps, went back to Oxford to go to grad school. And a lot of people said, well, why do you want to go to grad school, same place you went to undergrad? Well, it was the quality of education. It was that sense of if it's going to be me, or if it's going to be, it's got to be me, type of thing. I like that environment. I like that atmosphere. So I got an apartment with one of my good friends from here, and we went 2 years over in Oxford. After the Marine Corps, and I went back to grad school, Likewise had an apartment. But I was coming to the end of my MBA program, and there was a group of probably 15 or 20 of us that were all in that same boat, 1 quarter to go. And I had a job offer from Armco. Now you have to raise the internal question, do I finish the 1 quarter or do I take this job offer? Why did I come to Miami? It was to get a job offer. The job offer was in my chosen career field, and it was the same field that I had had in the Marine Corps also, in human resources. Back then you called it personnel. But here it is, undergraduate experience in management and marketing, personnel in the Marine Corps, MBA experience at Miami. I had a job offer in that field. None of my friends had a job offer at the time. The job offer was in Butler, Pennsylvania. Okay, totally new experience, don't know a soul, nobody knows me. I thought about it and I said, I'm here to get a job. So I moved to Butler, Pennsylvania, and ultimately retired from Armco as Director of Employee Benefits for the entire corporation. Was responsible for all the pensions, the medical, dental, vision, 401k, executive plans, all of that, prescription drugs for the entire corporation. And that was interesting because at sometimes when Armco was at its height, we had employees not only in this country, but also in other countries. And the benefit structure in other countries is far different than our benefit structures. What's required, what you do, how you do it. And historically, American big business is trying to say, we're going to treat everybody the same, we're going to group everybody together. Well, some of these external influences, other government type requirements, couldn't happen. So it was an interesting deal. I worked for Armco in the summers. When I graduated from high school, I started working in the labor pool. Literally started sweeping floors at Armco. End of the summer, you're terminated. Come to Miami, Middletown. Next summer, back to Armco. Back to Miami, Middletown. Back to Armco, Oxford. I can honestly say I owe Armco my college education. It's as simple as that. I mean, and that's a very different connection than probably most of the people that you talk to, because it was the kind of company that you wanted to work for. They treated their people well. And what you see here in brick and mortar is representative of how they treated their employees and how they wanted their employees and their families to be able to progress educationally.
I'm wondering if you can tell us about some of those professors who made a difference for you.
Well, first was Dr. Stetzer. Dave Stetzer walked into class the first day, and it was typical. Most professors write their name on the blackboard. He wrote Mr. Wizard. You would ask him a question. He had a book, and he had lecture notes and so on. He was, to my understanding, one of the original developers of lasers, and was extremely knowledgeable about lasers. And this is back, 1966. You and I didn't see those kinds of things. The thing I remember most about his class was you would ask him a question about something, and the typical answer you got was, I don't know. The next class, he'd come in and he'd have a complete explanation and everything. I mean, if you ask him a question about lasers, you got that much of an answer, in that much of time. But things outside his wheelhouse, if you will, that he didn't know, he was honest enough to say, oh, I don't know. But there's that sense of going back and doing what needs to be done the next time you got a good answer. So it wasn't that you were shortchanged at all. Interesting person. Very student-oriented. Another one I can think of is Ned Helzer. Ned was the business prof. I don't know whatever happened to him. I was over in Oxford about 10 years ago and saw his name on a plaque as one of the major donors for the new Aqua Center and so on. But very methodical, very good professor, would take a difficult concept and explain it to you, not in simple terms, but in everyday terms that you could internalize and say, okay, yep, that's how I do that. I remember another professor, Dr. Kiefer, English prof. Frederick C. Kiefer, his memory serves me well. Interesting English prof. We had to write a short story for him. I did. I turned it in. I get it back, and he says, I want to talk to you about that. Okay. So I stay after class, and you know, at that stage, you're still in the, oh, what did I do wrong? Our teacher's keeping me after class concept, because that's what you'd had for the first 12 years of your education. He said, there is a annual literary contest at Miami. And they publish a book with short stories. And his exact word, he said, I submitted your story to that. Really? And his exact words to me, I'll never forget them, was, I liked it. I've read all the other stories in the book. I don't think yours has a snowball's chance in hell of winning because it was that good. And I don't remember whatever happened to that or the book, but it was a ghost story of sorts. You know, that was a neat thing for somebody to come to you and just give you that recognition personally. It wasn't. This is the first I've really talked about that outside of, you know, my wife, who doesn't believe I can write a complete sentence. But it was a neat way of interacting with a professor. There were other professors here that weren't, I don't want to say as personable, and you tend to interact with those that, if it was business, okay, that was a business prof, and that was something that I'm doing. There was also Dr. Bergstrom, David Bergstrom. What a character. Had lectures in Johnston Hall at the time. People say his lectures are legendary. He taught physiology. Very open, informative, blunt. He, I don't think, ever heard the term politically correct. He said it as he thought, and you accepted it, and you, no matter what it was, you weren't offended. You know, it was, okay, I'm learning something here, and he was quite, his classes were quite good. I remember the other physiology person was Lorna Kell, young grad student, or not much older than us. Taught the labs. And Friday mornings at 8 o'clock you had physiology lab. And it was basically dissection. So you go in there, and the first week everybody is issued a worm or a frog, cat, you know, shark. We did a lot of different things. And at the end of the class, you had to put your lab specimen back in a container with formalin in it, and you had a tag that you would tag a leg or something, so that next class period, when they got your specimen back out, knew whose it was. Well, it was not the tradition to put your own name on it, that this was yours. You named it. So, you know, okay, who's George Washington? Okay, who's Elvis? My animals all had the first name, the same, and the last name was the animal's name. Because when she would pull it out, she says, who's dead frog? Who's dead cat? I can see you're chuckling. That's the way it was at that part. And you learned with a smile. You learned here with a laugh. It was serious, but it was on a more positive type note than you typically think of, the heads down writing and, you know, doing all that. You know, it wasn't that way. The one entrance out here didn't used to have speed bumps. And we had a skateboarding group. She rode down that hill on the front of my skateboard with me. We didn't go all the way to the top when we were doing two, but you know, this was the camaraderie that was here. That was the impact that the professors made. It wasn't, I realize it's a university and we talk about book learning, but it was the life learning that these people made the difference in. And that's what made the difference on this campus. And I got to say, when you went over to Oxford, you lost a lot of that sense of family. Great professors, great school, glad to be there, glad to have been there. But it was a lot more a sense of family here. And that's not unusual, because you're going into, you know, a much bigger pool of people and bigger classes and so on. You know, their professor, unless something was really wrong or really right, didn't know your name. Here they not only knew your name, but they probably knew what town you lived in and, you know, what kind of car you drove. That was the difference.
During the early discussions about having a college here, there was this expectation that the college would serve the community. Do you have any evidence that the vision was fulfilled?
The vision of serving the community for this college, the only way I can describe that, because I've literally been away from here 48 years. When I left this campus, you had Johnston Hall, which was only a fraction of what it is today. You had the Gardner Highway Library. At the top of Heart Attack Hill, you had Verity Lodge. Now look at what you have. Sports building, science building in the works, the library, of course, Dave Finkelman Auditorium. You know, you don't grow like that without serving the community. I get on social media a lot of notes and messages from former classmates and people from here. And they all mention, oh, this is going on out at the college. This is going on at college. Not a one has been said, oh, this is going on, you know, somewhere else in Middletown. It seems to be the hub of activity. I've been away from here, as I say, 48 years, and I've been back a few times. Each time, it's just seemed the town seems to be a little sadder, a little quieter, whatever. I come out here, and it's completely the reverse. So this is where the person coming in from out of town, this is where the hub of activity is. Now I know they're doing a lot downtown to revitalize downtown and so on. a lot of work to do. Saw some evidence of that this morning in tours of some old places that where I was very familiar with in the past. But that went like this, and now they're trying to go like this. This place just started here and keeps going up.
So your opinion of Bunny Hollow Tech is?
Glad to have had that in my history. There are very few things. There are some things in my history, and I can think of this place. I can think of experiences in Oxford. I have often said there's no amount of money in this world that I would take for the experience I had in the United States Marine Corps. However, there's not enough money in this world that would make me go back. I think the difference is, yes, I would come back here. We have a community college in the town I live in now. They're working very hard and doing well and mirroring what from what I've seen, what you all here are doing. The difference is it's a standalone. It's not a branch of a bigger entity. Several local colleges around the area, some large, some small. I see there one of the big things that's happening in the western Pennsylvania area is the colleges are focusing not only on the new students out of high school, but the students who have completed their work career experience and learning in retirement. There's a lot of that going on where I live. And it's interesting to see because you not only have students that kind of grew up in that school environment, but also in a variety of others. So it's that first day of college all over again.
It's been a pleasure to listen to your stories and your perspectives, and I'm grateful that you shared them with us. Are you ready to terminate the interview, or is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't know of anything else to add, except it's been, I was back here for the 10th anniversary. We had a cake, a multi-tiered cake, and helped cut the cake out there. I was back on the 40th. Somehow I must have been a lost soul at 20 and 30, and it's a pleasure to be back now. And it's unique for me because it's my high school 50th reunion, so I'm seeing friends, and today a lot of them said, yep, I'm planning on going out to Mom this afternoon before the thing tonight. So it's good to see those people.
Grand. Do I have your permission to terminate the interview?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.